Hi there. Thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar on supporting and valuing differences in neurodiverse interaction. Here are some questions that can support perspective taking. It's important to only ask these types of questions when your young person is calm and regulated, and you are too. Try to pause to allow them processing time, up to 10 seconds. And time to think of a response. Using these types of questions can be helpful when supporting your young person to navigate social misunderstandings or miscommunications in friendships and other relationships. For some young people, these questions might be challenging, so they might need you to make more comments initially rather than ask questions. Here are some examples of comments you could make to model this awareness and support your young person, labeling potential emotions or opinions in a concrete way. Remember again to allow processing and response time. If this is too sensitive or difficult, you could start by commenting on books, shows, or films you watch together, as discussed earlier, rather than real personal situations. A little is better than too much. 1 or 2 well-placed comments during a film may be more effective than a running commentary. It can also be helpful to use visuals to support identifying and labeling emotions as part of perspective taking. Having a visual to refer to, either printed or on phone screen, can help make things more concrete for your young person. Carol Gray's social stories are a great way to support understanding, reduce anxiety about situations, and to build perspective-taking skills. They guide the young person through a situation from their perspective and help them understand what to expect, as well as giving them strategies that they can use in the situation if needed. Unfortunately, some social stories are written in a way to compel compliance in autistic children, so that adults can get them to do what they want. This approach encourages masking, discounts the child's needs and perceptions, and attempts to control a behaviour, such as, I should not interrupt, I will be quiet. However, Carol Gray's original approach is, firstly, to abandon all assumptions. Secondly, to recognise that social difficulties are shared by both sets of people in the situation. And thirdly, to remember that both perspectives are equally as valid. Social stories should be individualised for the child, with language and images pitched at the right level. They should describe more than they direct, and answer WH questions for the child. For example, who will be in a location? Why do we need to go there? How long will we be there? And so on. They should use reassuring language rather than judgmental language. Here is an example of a social story around getting angry. As you can see, it describes the situation and validates the feelings of the young person involved. It also describes the perspective of others in the situation in clear language. It then identifies strategies that the young person can use when they feel angry, rather than focusing only on what they should not do. Often social stories work well, in fact they often work best, if the young person is involved in developing the social story themselves. For example, if they identify which strategies work best for them. Social stories that involve photos of the young person themselves, or video social stories can also work well. There are many ways to make social stories, and there are now many creation apps available for all sorts of devices. Pictello is one useful app for making social stories, as well as for sharing news with the support of images. It's easy to take photos at home and to add them to the stories, which ensures that the pictures are relevant and recognisable to the child or young person. It's available on iPhone or iPad. Comic strip conversations, also developed by Carol Gray, are another helpful tool when exploring both people's perspectives and feelings in a situation, such as disagreements, misunderstandings, or conflicts. They often work well to help a young person reflect on a challenging situation after it has happened, again, when they are calm and regulated. They can be particularly useful for helping the young person to reflect on a challenging encounter with a friend or a peer. When introducing the concept of comic strip conversations, start with the positive. Use a social situation or conversation that went well, to get used to talking and drawing them out. Draw who was involved and what was happening. And use the talking bubbles to record what was said. Use the thought bubbles to identify how the young person was feeling during the interaction, as well as the other people involved. Comic strip conversations can be developed using colours to represent the emotional content of a statement, message, or thought. Let's look at an example. Here's an exchange between Jane and Tim that happens at school. And here we can see that most of the exchange is green. So this represents good ideas, happiness, or friendliness. So at the beginning strip, we see that Tim has a very positive thought about Jane and he wants to ask her to go to the cinema with him. We can also see that everything they say is said in a friendly or quite happy way. However, blue can be used to represent feeling uncomfortable or sad. So in this case, we can see that Jane is a little bit uncomfortable because she doesn't know Tim well. She's a bit nervous. Then if we continue the exchange, we'll see the color orange, which is used to represent questions and make them clear. And here we can see a little bit more blue for feeling uncomfortable. So in this case, Tim is uncomfortable because he's nervous. And Jane continues to be a little bit worried because she's surprised by Tim's questions. She's a bit uncomfortable. You can also use red to represent bad ideas, anger, unfriendliness. Yellow for fear or being frightened. Black for facts or truth. Brown to represent a comfort or cozy feeling. Purple for pride. And then a combination of colours to represent confusion or mixed feelings. By presenting the different elements of a conversation visually, it helps to make some of the more abstract aspects of social communication, such as recognising others' emotions and why they might be feeling them, more concrete and easier to process. Here's an example of a hand-drawn comic strip conversation about sharing. This one doesn't use colours, and as you can see, the style is quite simple. However, what it does very clearly is show the thoughts as well as what's said behind the situation. It also shows quite clearly that just giving the ball back at the end hasn't really resolved the situation because of the feelings that both characters are still experiencing. Once you've explained the misunderstanding, then you can consider possible solutions or alternative ways of managing the situation with the young person. You might draw out other possible scenarios and explore the different outcomes. This can help the young person to understand how they might manage the same situation differently next time. Here we have another example of sharing, one situation that didn't go so well, and what they could do next time. This helps the young person get involved and imagine what they realistically might do the next time. When you've established the comic strip format, they can be very useful for problem solving, brainstorming, and finding potential social solutions in a way that involves your young person and includes them. These are some questions you could use when drawing the conversation, to help your young person give their perspective and feelings, and to think about that of the other people involved. Start with the most concrete facts, such as where were you, who was there, and then work towards more abstract or emotionally focused questions. To review what we've looked at, the most important goal is to raise your young person's awareness that different people can have different perspectives on the same situation, and that's okay. They should also know that misunderstandings can happen on both sides of an interaction. It's helpful to model strategies for preventing and repairing communication breakdown, such as asking for clarification, confirming you understand them, and labeling body language that shows confusion and other emotions. Do perspective-taking practice when everyone is calm and regulated. If your child is upset, it's not the time and it's not going to stick. Instead, at that time, validate their perspective. For example, I see you're frustrated. It's really annoying when people don't share, and give them time. Use media and your own experiences to label emotions and practice imagining the perspective of other people. Commenting and labeling can be an easier, lower pressure place to start than asking questions. Allow processing time. Visuals, social stories, and comic strip conversations can all help make social interactions more understandable and therefore less stressful, in a way that includes rather than just instructs a young person. Thank you very much for your attention during these webinars. We hope that you found them helpful. For further information on strategies, you can also find a leaflet on the Enable Ireland website with tips from the team on supporting neurodiverse interaction.